As you know, we use this platform to share stories of resilience. And today I have a very special guest. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. This is Sally Allen, your host, and today we have our guest, our honored guest. We're so happy to have her on the show, Dr. Cindy Tsai. And to tell you a little bit about Dr. Cindy Tsai, she's an award-winning board-certified physician. She's a TEDx speaker. She's a best-selling author, chief wellness officer, and the founder of Yes and More. Dr. Cindy, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I know you had a busy day. You were running around. I'm glad you made it. So it's a miracle, but you are here. So, Cindy, tell us what is founder of Yes and More? What is Yes and More? That is.
So I founded my company, Yes and More, which is a personal growth and wellness company focused on helping leaders, executives, and organizations really prioritize their health and well-being through a comprehensive mind, body, spirit approach. And I named it Yes and More because I really want to encourage everyone to say yes to yourself and more.
Oh my gosh, that's so incredible. I like that a lot. So, the reason you're on my podcast is because we met in LA at the We Expo, right?
Yes.
I was moderating that panel, and you shared your story, and I was floored because it's so near and dear to my heart, mental wellness. And one of the things you would share that I kept going back to you on the panel is that you were so stressed out at one point in your life that you actually went blind. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked about this story in my TEDx talk, and I want you to imagine waking up one day not being able to see. And that was what happened to me.
Wow.
So this was over 10 years ago. I was still in medical training and residency. And I will never forget that day when I woke up. The whole room looked dark and blurry. I tried putting my glasses on, contacts, like nothing changed. And I was so confused. And I remember trying to stay calm, trying to run through different potential diagnoses in my head and to figure out what was going on. And it was this really terrifying experience like I thought I was in a dream, but it was actually real life.
Yeah.
I went to see the optometrist who couldn't give me an answer. So my prescription basically increased threefold overnight.
Wow.
And but then they couldn't really see anything else. And then I went to see an ophthalmologist, a specialist, got blood work done, and same thing, everything looked fine. And so it was just this very confusing and terrifying experience to basically be this medical mystery.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us the events that led up to this.
Yeah. Well, so what happened was after a while, other symptoms came up, and I was diagnosed with a very rare autoimmune condition impacting my eyes that could have led to full blindness.
Oh my gosh.
And so, with autoimmune conditions, usually it's because there's significant inflammation in your body. And I had to pause and to look at what was going on in my life, what was causing all of this inflammation. And a big part of the answer was stress.
Wow.
So at the time, I was in residency training where you work all the time. I was actually also doing night shifts. That was my shift, my rotation for that period of time. So I was working nights. And then during the day, instead of sleeping and resting, I would still be raising my hand to volunteer, to do research, to basically do all the things because I've
Right.
been such an overachiever,
Hmm.
right? And then I would drink caffeine to stay awake. And then at night, not really even be able to rest or sleep because my mind was still so busy
Yeah.
thinking about all the things I didn't do, I still need to do, I should do. And all of it really caught up to me when I got sick. And I think for me, I had always been very health conscious, even as a kid. I would be actually drinking water instead of juice or
Yeah.
soda. I would I would be eating my vegetables and all of that. So I was always actually very health conscious, and that's why I was really interested in medicine and being a physician because I wanted to help other people be healthy and well.
Hmm.
And so when this happened to me, I was just in shock because I felt like I was, it's not like I was eating crazy, terrible stuff and whatever, but I just had to really pause and recognize that all of the stress over the years and definitely all of the mental stress has definitely caught up to me. And it really impacts our physical health. And so this was a total wake up call for me.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about though is a holistic approach because you're saying you can eat right, which you've done all of your life. You can eat right, but there's this other component of your health, which is your mental health, and the things that you were doing were not healthy. It wasn't the eating part, it was just what you were doing. I'm sure you were working out also. Were you working out?
Well, not as much as I would have liked
Yeah,
to, all the scheduling with the nights and stuff, but I think in general, for sure, I really think about health as being multi-dimensional.
yeah, yeah.
And a lot of times we may only think about one side of it in terms of, oh, yeah, what am I eating? How am I exercising? How's my sleep?
Yeah.
But there is definitely a huge mental health component that I'm a huge proponent for after going through this experience and really seeing working with so many patients and clients, really helping them understand that to be healthy, you really need to look at all parts of you.
Right. Yeah, holistically, every asset, every facet of your life. I like that. So, what did you do? So now you found out you had this autoimmune, this autoimmune disease. How
Mhm.
did you start seeing again? What were some of the things you put in place to help you get to where you are?
Yeah, so for me, this was a very rare 1 in a million type of condition. And so it was frustrating because there's not a ton of research and data. And I remember the doctor looking at me being confused and saying like, well, this is interesting.
Uh,
And you definitely don't want to be interesting to a
Right.
doctor as a patient.
Yeah.
But basically, because it's an autoimmune condition, we started with all the serious medications like steroids, immunosuppressants, and really to calm down the inflammation. And thankfully, that did help stabilize the condition. And and then after that, I just became so motivated to figure out what was going on and to really heal myself. And
Hmm.
so I looked into other modalities of treatments and I found integrative medicine, functional medicine, these specialties that really focus on looking at the root cause of your condition. And I found really embraced mindfulness, coaching, energy healing, acupuncture, Eastern medicine, supplements. And really, I think it's all the things together. It took a few years, but thankfully, I was able to get off all the serious steroids, all the medications, and be able to heal my vision back. So I'm incredibly grateful for that.
How long did that take you?
It took like 3 years in total, the whole journey. I was on the steroids for about 3 years. Yeah. Mhm.
Wow. So are you curious? Are you back to normal prescription? Your
Yeah, so
eyes.
I'm back. Yeah, so my eyes, my vision is back to what it was before. And then thankfully I don't have to be on the rely on the immunosuppressive to be able to see. Mhm.
Wow. Is that why you started the Yes and More Foundation?
Well, I think for me, my healing journey really showed me that we really need to take the holistic approach to well-being. And even though after getting better, I completed my residency training and started working as a primary care physician. And I really enjoyed that. And it was an honor to be able to take care of patients, to build the relationships. But I found that I had a lot of frustrations working with the current Western healthcare system in the US, where we are, and how a lot of times it's very much focused on just the symptom and prescribing medications to almost like a band-aid to cover up your symptoms. And for me, I really wanted to help people learn that there are so many other ways to actually heal
Hmm.
and to get to the root of things so that you actually don't even need that medication, that you can actually really learn how to take care of yourself, to prioritize your health and well-being, and to be really truly well and to live with.
Yeah. And they are different, Western medicine, but they are different sources where you can have your body generate what it's already generating, like your serotonin and your dopamine. Talk to me a little bit about that, especially the Western medicine.
Well, I think that there's so much more research these days, which is great, about how, for example, our gut microbiome is really important. So the gut microbiome is basically, we have like trillions of
Bacteria,
bacteria
yeah.
all over us, in our bodies. And a lot of them are good bacteria that help to basically facilitate various chemical reactions to produce different hormones and things like that to make sure that we're functioning at optimal level. And I think that sometimes with Western medicine, you don't always have that perspective. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand, as I talked about in my TEDx talk, um, there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah.
And it's not about saying no to Western medicine, no to medications, and, do the other stuff. But because sometimes I see that people can be very extreme.
Yeah.
It's like only Western medicine, only alternative, and like none otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think for me, my perspective and approach is that we are so fortunate to have access to so many modalities and ways to heal, to get better, to be well, that it's about being aware and exposed to different methods and taking what works for you, taking this very personalized approach so that you can really maintain and have that holistic health and well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying do some research, get a second opinion, talk to people before making that decision on what approach should be taken.
Absolutely. And I think it's actually very helpful for people to think about having a healthcare team around them.
Mm-hmm.
It's instead of just relying on one practitioner for everything, but even bringing in, different modalities. I have a chiropractor, I have an acupuncturist, I have my primary doctor, I have all of these health and wellness practitioners who are part of my team. And so I really always encourage people to do the research, to learn more, to educate themselves, and knowing that it's not one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's different. The things you need are different.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to be aware that there are so many things, and some of which will be super helpful for you.
Yeah. I like that approach. So, what does a chief wellness officer do?
So, a couple things. I really focus on helping leaders and executives prioritize their health and well being from taking this holistic mind, body, spirit approach. And so, from the direct to leaders side, it's coaching, one on one, group programs, retreats, things like that. And on the other side, I also do a lot of corporate wellness with speaking, training, presentations, and also consulting for organizations that are interested in prioritizing workplace well-being, because we know that when our team members, when employees are happy, when they're healthy, they're more engaged in work, right? They're more productive, more focused, and retention goes up, productivity, profitability, everything, everyone wins. So I'm really fortunate to be able to do several types of work
Yeah.
in as a chief wellness officer, and just been really fun to explore and to support people in many different ways.
Yeah, I love that. I think going back to what you said about the microbiome and your stomach, I don't think a lot of people realize that their gut is their second brain.
That's right.
Yeah, and that whole gut brain axis, talking about the gut brain axis and knowing that most of your serotonin and your dopamine is made like in your it's created in your gut, and people don't realize that. So your stress starts here. And
Yeah.
so talk to us a little bit about that. You start talking about it, I got excited.
So a lot of times I think this is probably a good example. So a lot of times people, when they're feeling anxious, might feel nauseous or feel like their stomach gets tense, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, is really common.
Hmm.
And, for that, sometimes people basically would have frequent stools or more tend towards constipation, bloating. Like there's just so many things. And it basically highlights that in our gut, in our GI tract, there's actually a lot of immune cells and tissues. And so we have basically a ton of, think about the immune system is actually in our gut. And so that's why when we're stressed out, it's all connected.
Yeah.
We feel, like the muscles, if you actually think about it, the intestines, they have a layer of like muscle cells. And
Right.
so think about when you're stressed, like muscles tense up,
Yeah.
and that happens everywhere in the body, not just from, we hold stress in different parts of our bodies. For some people, for me, I hold it in my neck and shoulders, I get
Yeah.
tension there.
Yeah.
And then think about, so if you think about the gut, like the intestine as having, essentially
Hmm.
like that muscle layer in a sense, right? Like that's like that tension, and like basically it's going to be more active for some people, less active, so basically that's why GI symptoms are actually oftentimes very much tied to stress and all of that.
Yeah. I'm like you. Mine is in my shoulders and my neck, and if it gets too bad, it would start pulsing. You can feel the nerves, everything
Yeah.
just start pulsing there. Yeah. So one of the things you talked about here, um, I'm talk a little bit about you, overachiever. Why? You know I'm gonna
Well,
go there.
so for me, I grew up in Taiwan,
Hmm.
and in a traditional Chinese family, traditional Chinese culture. And I think that inherent in the culture, there's a lot of expectations about education, success, and all of that. And I'm also the youngest of four daughters. And I think for me, I just always, there was a big age gap between me and my sisters. And so I always felt like I had to be this perfect daughter, perfect student, perfect everything. And so that created a lot of pressure and stress. And I think that's what got me on this overachiever, pattern that really added so much stress to my life. And I see this a lot working with a lot of very accomplished, successful leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, a lot of people who see themselves as type A's, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's important to know that, yes, a lot of these qualities can be very helpful in terms of our success, but it also is really important to maintain that sense of balance so that you're not too skewed off to one side and then you're just all about working, productivity, being busy, and then one day you burn out.
Yeah. Are you saying understanding what's driving you? Because it sounds to me like your past was driving you and you brought that into your future and you just keep going at that same pace without slowing down?
Yeah, absolutely. Ever since I was young, I wanted to be a physician. And so I knew that it was going to be require a lot of hard work, that it was going to be a process. And I worked really hard. I went to all the top schools, Johns Hopkins, Dartmouth for med school, Ivy League education, just doing all the right things, research, checked off all the boxes. And then I think when I had that episode, the health crisis breakdown, it really prompted me to pause and slow down and to realize that to really realign
Mm-hmm.
and think about what is really important to me, what is my why, what is the
Yeah.
purpose of all of this, right? It's not just to, especially once you finish school, it's no longer just about getting that A, right? The
Yeah.
GPA and whatever, but it's really more about, I would say, connecting to your soul, your deeper purpose, and making sure that you're living a life that's truly aligned with that.
Yeah, I like that. So, what are some of the processes you put in place to connect with your soul and finding, your deeper purpose?
Well, it's definitely a process. And I wish I could say there's like a 10-step, checklist. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
think for me, there's been different seasons in my life. And one thing I always like to share with clients, with your audience is that to really give yourself permission to slow down.
Mm,
And I think especially when you're a high performer, overachiever, we have this tendency to keep going nonstop. It's like we get it, we reach the goal, and we're already moving on to the next, to the next, to the next.
yeah,
And while it's great to continue to grow and to set high, big goals, whatever it is, sometimes we actually don't even realize that we've started to go slightly off kilter.
mm-hmm.
And so that's why I talk about the importance of pausing, slowing down. And this can be done in many ways. For me, as a mindfulness teacher, I really bring in simple mindfulness practices regularly through breathing, meditation, journaling, a lot of that, being in nature, and really intentionally creating space in my schedule,
Yeah,
having blank space to sit, to have just do fun, silly things, whatever
yeah,
it is. But I think it's really important to really be mindful and intentional of where you're going, what you're doing, and checking in with yourself along the way.
yeah.
Because I find that 5 years ago, I may have had this goal.
Mm-hmm.
And today, my life and goals look different. And we have to really give ourselves permission to look at it and
Yeah,
to be courageous to change course when needed.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, I see a lot of my clients, you're absolutely right. They go, 90% of them, they have a promotion and they go into that promotion and just start thinking about what the next step is. And I say the word I use to them is planted. I like that word a lot because I tell them stay planted for a year. Enjoy the position. Recognize that you've made it from,
Yes.
from a manager to a senior VP or a director to a VP, whatever that looks like. But stay planted for a year, learn about it, understand it, and then think about that next step.
Absolutely. One thing I always love talking about is the practice and skill of self-compassion.
Yes.
And I wish that they taught this in schools. Maybe they are doing that now.
Yeah.
I think it's so important because we're all so hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
especially when you're a high performer, when you're a successful, driven person in any arena. And a lot of times, because we have such high expectations for ourselves, when we hit our goals, we almost forget to celebrate.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
Do you feel that's changing though? Because we're talking so much about mental health, and there is so much awareness, that's bubbling up to the surface. Do you feel like more and more executives are becoming aware of it, and the landscape changing a little bit, where people are more mindful of their self care?
I definitely see the trends towards that, but I would say it still would depend on the company, the culture. So there's definitely still work to be done. But I think absolutely it's really encouraging to see that we're having more conversations about mental health, right? About taking time off and being open about that and being vulnerable and sharing and recognizing that it's not about putting a mask on when you're at work and then being a totally different person when you're at home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's being able to have these brave, safe spaces for people to really connect and be and show up as the best version of themselves.
Yeah, and I feel like it's okay to say I need a mental health day, like I just need
Mhm.
a break, right? Because sometimes we're tired, we're physically tired, but we never think about being mentally tired, like, oh my gosh, I need a mental health day where I can just go out in nature, sit down, read a book, get some sunshine on me so that I can recharge to get back to work.
100%. And that's why I think that, especially for leaders, it's really important to lead by example.
Yeah.
So, for example, for a lot of senior leaders, they might be checking their emails all the time, right? You get
Yeah.
tons of emails
Yeah.
on the weekend, late at night, and then some of them will be replying to them, right? When they get it,
Yeah.
because they're like, oh my gosh, I can't, if I don't do this now, I'm gonna have like 350 emails waiting for me, like when I go back of whatever. And so but I also really advise them to think about the message it's sending to their team, right?
Right.
And how we can say one thing, but your actions have to align for you to
Yes.
for people to really see you and to respect you and to for you to really be seen as authentic, right? Because you're actually really living what you're saying. So I think that's really something that I always encourage people to just pay attention to. And a lot of it is unconscious, because
Yeah.
of the habits and practices that they may have seen from their seniors and whoever. So it's really about, I think, we all it's an exciting time because we all get to play an active role in changing the landscape, right? When
Yeah.
one person does differently, when we lead by example and we inspire others, it really creates a ripple effect outward.
Yeah, and people actually, they organically learn from their leaders, and they will look at what their leaders do, and that's what they will emulate every time. So you're
Absolutely.
absolutely on point with that. So, do you have any takeaway for our audience today?
Well, I feel like I shared a lot and I always have so many different things. to share.
Yeah.
I think a couple things come up would be that one of my favorite lines that I always like to share is to know and not do is to not know.
Mm.
And if you think about it, to know and not do is to not know. It sounds simple, but basically it's saying that you can read all the books, right? Know everything. And a lot of times, especially when I coach women talking about self-care, they're like, oh yeah, I know I have to put my oxygen mask on first, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But then when you ask them, are they actually putting in the self-care appointments? Are they actually taking time away? Are they actually having boundaries and saying no?
Mm-hmm.
Not really, right?
Right. Right.
And so that's why they don't have the results. They don't, that's why they're burning out.
Yeah.
And so I really always encourage people to really be intentional about everything you're doing. Know your why, right? What's your intention for the day? And really be aware of, okay, I know how to be healthy, but I still go have fast food and drink soda all day. That's incongruent, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really about, I think for me, when I talk about wellness, it's really being aligned
Right.
in mind, body, and spirit. So that's one important takeaway I hope people can hear is that you can know it and you might hear it a lot and you're like, oh yeah, I know that, I know how to do the breathing exercises and this and that, right? But then it's another to actually be like, well, am I actually doing it, right?
Yeah.
That's really important.
Am I putting legs to what I know? Am I putting legs to what I know? And by putting legs, the way you put legs to it is that you have to be intentional and set time aside to do it. Make those appointments and do it.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Dr. Cindy, for being on the Sally Allen podcast. And friends, until next time.
Thank you so much.